All right, so I'm using a Prismacolor here. The reason I'm using a Prismacolor is it's really not erasable. It's something that's permanent, and when you put it down, you kind of have to leave it there. So it teaches you something about what works and what doesn't work. And when you're doing a drawing like this, that you're looking for an expression, I would do many of these. I wouldn't just do one, I would do several. Draw them as large as you can first so that you have enough room to identify all the nuances. Then you can scale it down or scale it up or do whatever you need to do with it. But at around hand size, that's a really good size for the size of the head. This is a stock head size, but we also need to grow it a little longer. We need to bring the chin down because the jaw is opening up. We're going to stretch out these lines over here and over here. Now, we divide the head into thirds normally, and then the jaw needs to be extended, and I think we could take this down even further if we're really going to push the expression. The cheekbones are at their widest, and they're being pulled taut because the skin from the jaw is pulling down, and it's stretching everything over the bones on the zygotes, so we can really see the shape of them pretty easily. Then we also have the corner of the jaw. That's never going to go away. That's the hinge point, and it's always going to remain in the same spot. It's the actual length of the jaw through the chin that's going to lower on the face. This photograph is also shot with a close-up lens, and what that does is it expands the cheekbones and it turns the ears back in space because it's sort of focusing right around in here and it's bowing space, so it's actually distorting the sides of the heads a little bit. The thing to keep in mind though is ears should always be visible. They should never disappear. And when the ears are barely visible, you have too close-up of a photograph. Silence! Hairline up and over and around. So we have the basic framework now. The underside of the nose is going to be lifted on the corners and dipping in the middle, so I want to make a more extreme triangle out of this. Through the middle in here, there's all sorts of skin that's sort of crinkling. I want to find the side planes of the face before I draw the eyeballs in, because I want to make sure that the eyeballs don't drift on us. And this is a big problem that I see with a lot of drawings, is that if we don't identify the front from the sides, then the facial features have a tendency to expand and throw everything out of proportion. So we want to keep those proportions as tight as possible. There's an eyeball width between the eyeballs, so I want to put the tear ducts in there to make sure that I can push those eyeballs to the exact position that they need to be. And then his eyes are lifted up on the top. I'm going to find a rhythm that goes across both sides. Try to solve as much as possible all at once. So rhythm that's going back and forth across the face is a really important one there. We have the forehead through here. There's a bunch of skin that's sort of wrinkling and furrowing over on these 2 points, and that's why that forehead circle is kind of important to draw in here. Both of the eyes are going to be lifted up here and right along in here, and then we're going to have the bottom planes of the lower half of the eye socket over here and over here. And this is going around the orbital, the orbicularis oculi, so it's sharpening right underneath that muscle. Then we have the laugh lines that traverse down through the nose into the chin. And that's one big rhythm as well. We have the mouth, and the mouth has a little bit of an asymmetrical feeling to it. It's lifted up slightly higher on his left, our right in the photo. And then the bottom, of course, is not going to have the same kind of screwed up feeling because it's the entire jaw hinge that's swinging downward. But the upper lip, we do have a little bit more flexibility with the shape of it. This is going to pinch through here. This is the philtrum, and it's going to pinch a little bit more through this space. I'm not worried about his beard or the 5 o'clock shadow or anything. I'm more concerned about the expression on the face. Coming into this and drawing the mouth, I now need to bring the laugh lines out a little farther from the corners of the mouth to really pull the expression. And then there's these little edges on both sides over here and over here. We would call this the dimple line, but in this case, it's going to be sinking in a little bit more and conforming to the pull through these little jowls along in here. The upper row of teeth is partly covered by lips, and the lower row of teeth, we can see the hinge, and then his tongue is directly in the middle. It's not lifted, so we can keep that right behind the teeth. I'm going to draw both of the irises, looking for the distance between the two of them, drawing everything very lightly to start off with so that I can start sinking in some values once the framework has been established. I pulled his ears out just a little bit farther. I'm going to pull the hair in just a little bit because I want the hair to kind of conform to this stretch. I don't want the shapes up here to kind of do their own thing. Everything should be catering to the expression. Every line in the drawing is pointing you to where you need to look, and it's all reacting together, everything together, including the hair.
If you want to practice drawing expressions, we have hundreds of reference packs at proko.com/tools. There's packs on facial expressions, gestural poses, costumes, and more. You can test out some free sampler packs in the Proko Timer tool, which lets you practice drawing with a timed session. Just choose the pack you want to draw, how many and how long for each pose, and bam, you're ready to go. And we also just made some updates. You can now navigate with keyboard shortcuts and download the current image to keep it locally for future reference. Go try it out at proko.com/timer.
Now I can go back in and I can start to make some indications with slightly sharper lines. Now I'm holding the pencil between these two fingers. That way I'm not holding it like writing, because there's a limitation to drawing when you're holding it this way. I'm also going to be holding it on its side so that I can take advantage of the broad side of the pencil as well as the tip. You can get onto the tip by doing this and then lay it down on its side to create those really nice pull lines through the face. Nice soft edges, especially with the Prismacolor here. It has that waxiness to it, and it's going to create a really velvety line that isn't going to be too sharp too quickly. And you don't want everything to be sharp either, because then all of the elements, the jaw, the ears, the hair, they're all in focus, and you really want to be able to focus in the areas that count the most, when that would be in these features right in the very center. Taking the cheekbone and following it through into the eyebrows. Both of his eyebrows are kind of doing the same thing. They're pretty much symmetrical, although this one looks like it's a little off to the left and maybe lifted just a little bit higher. I'm going to play that up a bit. I'll lift mine up just a little bit more, keep this one down a little bit more. Pull these inward here and here. Take the side of the pencil and block in the big shape of that. Do the same thing over here, block in the big shape of this. Then there's the fold lines that go up and over the nose, through here, along here, right around over in here. And then it looks like, yeah, the inner corners of his eyes are also pulling in here and over here. Everything that's in there is really showing that consternation, that anger. And you want to make sure to include all those lines if you can help it. As much as it may feel like you're aging the model,
I'm an old man.
what you're actually doing is pushing the expression. This comes down along through here. I'm going to keep these lines soft, bring this down around through here. The chin is going to be really sharp looking because the skin is pulling tight and it's pulling the skin back, so it's creating the forms of the skull through the skin much more visibly than you would normally see them. As far as the lips go, we're probably going to think about the thickness of them after we get the expression push. The details don't matter nearly as much as getting the big picture stuff working. And it doesn't feel like I've opened his mouth up wide enough. I'm going to try to pull this out just a little bit farther on both sides. Then through the inner edge of the teeth, up and around to the other side, pushing that to really show the hinge opened up on the jaw. Base of the nose in the center. The ball of the nose over here and over here are pulling, so they have folds on them as well. The nostrils are flaring downward. I'm going to start with the forward edge and then work my way back around to the other side. Notice also I'm not doing any one thing all at once. I'm kind of building everything up a little bit at a time. It's kind of important to do that so that you can see everything coming up before you've locked anything down permanently. It would be a problem then if you were to like focus just on this eye, build it up, and then try to put in all the other features to match that eye. It's really difficult to do that. So you kind of want to build in little bits and pieces. This is what you would call drawing all over at once, right? We're drawing all over the drawing at the same time. Come up and over. I want the hair to also sort of have anger to it. So it's going to flare out and kind of raise up a little bit. It's not going to be pressed against the head nicely. We have the bangs cutting in here. I want to make sure that they sweep through into the expression. And over here on the side, I'm going to take this up and over to this side. Take this up and over to this side. I'm going to pull these in towards these lines along in here. And I want them to kind of link with these lines on both sides of his cheeks. And we'll come in and start to solidify some of these other geometric shapes. And in a way, All these other lines are sort of warming up your hands so that when you get into these smaller areas, you have a little bit more dexterity at your disposal because you've warmed up the hands to get to those. You didn't start with them. It's always a shame to have a drawing get there, and then all of a sudden when you go to do the little stuff fails the big stuff. Now, I've definitely caught his likeness because the face is a bit wide through here. I'm actually going to thin things out just a little bit more on the sides to help really express the downward pull of this jaw. Get the other shapes of the ears put in here, and I'm going very generic with them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. The ears are the least important of the features here. It's all of this stuff now that we want to think about, and how we keep all of this moving in rhythm and helping force the expression even further. These secondary lines are the reason you can see the anger so vividly on his face. The folds over here at the corners of the eyes, they're very light on him. I'm going to push them a little bit here in the picture. Take this down through here, pull those anger lines up on both of his brows, and then the irises versus the pupils. Because he's angry, his pupils are going to be large. I want to make sure that those are much bigger. I don't want them to be small and relaxed looking. I want them to be really big and engaged and focused in on who he's angry at. If we were to look at the photo reference, we would see that in the photo as well. Stock photography isn't necessarily the best place to go. When you're filming somebody who's not an actor, they're going to give you the best that they can, but they're not going to give you quality. Quality comes from realism, the real world. So as much as it could be painful to look at online, my recommendation is not to go grab the stock photography first, but to actually go look for some real world settings where people are truly engaged in the activity that they're engaged in with the emotions that are appropriate for that particular activity. Illustration is acting. Illustration is one frame from a film, and you're trying to build the most expressive frame possible, and you're actually trying to get people who look at this to react the same way. These are moments you cannot fake. Now, this may sound like, my God, I got to dig through all this reference to find these things, but it's worth it going through that extra length to find these images and then rehearse them and then perform. And in your final performance, hopefully, it has just as much explosiveness as your sketches, as well as the reference. Point his tongue just a little bit more. Don't want it big and wide. Want it sharp. I'm using words here that express anger, so sharpness, bold, wild-eyed, wild shapes. And then the last thing that we want to do here is put in part of the neck and think about the platysma, which is the skin that comes down off of the jaw into the collarbone. And a lot of that is stretching through here. We're not seeing it as much over here, but we could assume that it's stretching on this side as well. And then his sternocleidomastoid muscles are really sharp where they're inserting onto the manubrium on the chest. We want to make sure to see those as well. And now we have that anger all through his neck and his head at the same time. And we're going to take the shirt line and sweep this up and over so we can also see that his head is dipping down just a little bit into his shoulder line. And then the collar just to frame it. His collar is loose, so it drops down across his back, comes back up over here. And his trapezius muscle we can see a hint of through the shirt. But yeah, having all of these lines pulling on the face. And each of these lifts just enough to where there's a shadow indication along here and along in here. Might not be a bad idea to at least indicate that. Because again, we're looking for what makes anger work like it does here. And this is like your note taking. So make sure that you have all the appropriate notes that you need for when you go to perform that drawing in your finish. But this is our warm-up. This is finding the expression. So in terms of it not working necessarily for the finished illustration, I think it's perfectly fine for the study because we learned something about this particular expression, making sure that all the hairs up here have that wild feel to them. And that means also through the space in here, and then maybe a little bit off to the sides over here and over here. I'm going to pull some lines that help explode everything outward and radiate it throughout.
I know. I got it. I got the concept.
bring the hairline back in so we don't lose that space and proportion. And yeah, I think we've got it. All right. So trying to get as much out of the study as possible, trying to find every nuance. Remember, an expression is not just the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. It's the whole entire face. And it's every line that's reacting to what these shapes are doing on the inside and here. And the more that you get the face to tie in with the expression, the more believable the expression. But again, you do need a model who's doing something convincing in order for that to work. I'm sure you've all seen somebody fake angry.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
And it doesn't look genuine at all. People have a tendency to try to hide their emotions, but when you're looking for something that really works, like I said, go to real world first if you can, and you're going to find something that's really meaningful in that space. I don't post a lot on social media, but when I do, it's like maybe once a month, but you can find me all over the internet. I have a YouTube channel. I also have a Discord channel you can find me at. I also have a website, lemonade.com, where you can go find the work that I do, but also you can inquire about mentorships and things of that sort. I teach for LAFA, and I also teach for TAG, which is the Hollywood Guilds. So when my name comes up, look for me when those classes are happening.